Welcome to Dive Deep. I'm your host, Caleb Swartz, and our goal here at Dive Deep is transformation. During this series, we're exploring the transformation that Pastor Arlie and CWC have experienced during his leadership and care. In today's episode, Pastor Branden will be joining us, and we'll explore the background of the sermon that we heard and some of the thoughts from Pastor Branden as he prepared for this week's message. Kick back and relax as we take a journey down memory lane in the Vintage Collection. Pastor Branden, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me once again, Caleb.
So glad. In 2009, Our Lives Under Construction was the first time the sermon was preached. I remember the house being built on stage.
I know. I mean, how could you forget that?
Yeah.
It's so creative.
It was really neat. A great
it's like 11
illustration.
years ago.
Yeah. Feels
12.
longer, though. A lot has happened
12
since
years
then.
ago.
Yeah. You know what else was popular in 2009? Silly bands.
Oh,
Remember
cool.
silly bands? The
I don't
shaped
know. I wasn't really
rubber
a
bands.
silly type guy, but
Well, yeah, but everybody else was. Digital cameras.
yeah, I still have mine. I just found mine.
What?
It's a Canon.
Oh, yeah.
And,
They're the best. Justin Bieber was on the rise.
yeah, who cares?
Biebs. He has a really interesting
He's an interesting guy, isn't he? Yeah.
theological thoughts now.
I'd like to interview him.
Yeah, he had a
Yeah.
split from Lentz over everything that
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
He had some really actually insightful words to share about that.
I mean,
whole ordeal.
he uses his platform to say Jesus loves you.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, it's interesting. You can kind of trace his relationship development with God over the last 4 or 5 years.
he's very talented. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't deny that. He's very talented.
Yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah.
Also in 2009, cell phones had keyboards.
Oh,
Did
it's
you
so
have
cool,
one?
man. T9 Word.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Nothing's better than a T9 Word if you know how to use it.
Right. One of the quotes of the day was "epic fail."
Yeah, I've
Remember?
said that.
Yep.
I still say that.
Flash mobs were a thing. Did you ever
Yeah.
participate in a flash mob?
I'm just not that cheesy.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't know.
It wasn't really
Just
my thing.
kind of corny to me.
There were some fun ones though.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You do it for engagement, whatever.
Right. And Netflix was still all about DVDs.
Yeah, those are the days.
Time before streaming, where you had to
Yeah.
wait 2 weeks for your next DVD to come in.
I know, man. How far have we come? You can just turn on the TV.
Right.
It's great.
What do you remember happening in 2009? Kind of what was going on in your life around this time?
Yeah, I said a little bit yesterday. No, I was single. I honestly, just a couple months before, I got out of a pretty unhealthy relationship. And so I was navigating. And actually at that time, I was just beginning a mentoring relationship with Pastor Arlie. And that, obviously ended up being a good thing. So I think I was just finding my way into how to have a healthy relationship, how to be a better pastor and, take care of myself. And then, you got that sermon that you hear all about how to care for yourself. So that's why I did it yesterday. It was so impactful for me.
That's really interesting. As you prepared for the message today in 2021, what spoke to you or what thoughts did you have that left an impact?
I think my thoughts were, man, this is still relevant today. And, I got a lot out of it as well, studying it. And, maybe some people were maybe a little confused about the beginning of the chiasm that I tried to explain. Maybe I should have had that in the outline.
I appreciated that you went there.
Isn't it cool, though?
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
structure
Right.
had purpose to it.
Yep.
To, the central message and how it's set up is, man, first, listen, you got to pay attention to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get right here. First, take this out, and then you can begin. So when I heard that, it just all came together as a sermon.
Yeah, and what I like about that was obviously there's a clear distinction there. And you had mentioned to love others the way we love ourselves, but that not being a self-focused approach to life, right? You're talking about a healthy person. I just want to make that abundantly clear. Like, healthy people can love people healthily.
Well, healthy people are the ones who love healthily.
Right.
And so that was the whole point of yesterday is how do you love yourself without being selfish? And really, it's the motive behind your self-improvement. Do you want to do it for you so you can look good to others, so you can walk down the street and have people look at you in envy and jealousy? Is that why you want to acquire health yourself, then that absolutely becomes selfishness and actually sinful.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, according to Jesus, we need to make sure we are right with God. We're in a good place to lead. We're in a good place to have a clear communication with somebody else who we're trying to help. It's all over the Bible. You love others as you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to love yourself.
Right.
You love yourself for the best interest of others, and that's where the difference is.
Yeah, and I think, I believe you really hit on the core of it. This idea of loving ourselves is really based on having a complete understanding of how God views us and what he calls us to. It's not diminishing what you do really well at for the sake of being or thinking you're humble, right? And it's also not elevating the areas that you're bad at so that you can ignore them and just think that you're awesome.
I said something about the physical aspect.
Yeah.
But your value isn't determined by how you look.
Mm-hmm.
But with the physical aspect, being 37, I have a 2-year-old. And so I want to take care of myself physically because I don't want to be in a walker walking her down the aisle. I want to have good health and be around for those moments for her.
Right.
When I'll be a little bit older of a dad, when those moments are happening in her life, I want to make sure I have good habits now so I can, be that, dad who can be around longer.
Absolutely. Well, and you also talked about just how taking care of ourselves physically, it improves the other areas of our lives.
It's so true, man. And too,
Oh, yeah.
Occasionally we get to work out together. But man, as you say, you're a better husband. The confidence level, I'm a better dad if I feel better about myself.
Right. And I think also when you see progress and you're hitting goals or you feel good or you're disciplined in one area of your life, it's easier to carry that into some other areas of life.
It's true.
And I think about that. I mean, that's one thing I've noticed in the last 5-10 years is Michelle and I are always kind of assessing where we're at with things and looking at it from, how are we doing physically, how are we doing spiritually, how are we doing emotionally or mentally. And it's like when one of those is totally trashed, it impacts the other two. But when one is really, really strong, then it pulls the other two up.
Yeah.
And we've noticed that.
It's so true. I mean, that's exactly with Nikki and I as well. One thing about that is, with Jesus, when Jesus was distraught, he knew he wasn't in a good place to go with the disciples across the sea.
That's interesting. I've never heard it put that way before.
What did he do? He went up and got alone.
Yeah.
He needed time for himself to get himself in the right mind to serve. That's Jesus. He got with his Father. He helped himself. And then he joined the people to do ministry again, his people and his disciples.
Right. I think that's a good discipline or a good method for life in general, because I'm sure every single one of us that is listening, it has at a time felt out of control anger or total manic, depressive darkness and I think there's this false notion that we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and force ourselves to feel great.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't see that there. I mean, Jesus clearly, he stepped away. He took some time. He worked on getting alone with God and letting God heal him,
Correct.
And then he went back into it.
Climbing the mountain and doing all the walking. He was obviously in physical health as well.
Yeah, right. Wonder if there's, and the cool thing is science has told us that there's a lot of value in getting into nature. Just the sound of water or wind in trees actually has healing effects on people.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, man. Like your mind is so powerful. That's why, I left in there, it's so important to speak positively to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And not negatively. That is huge.
Yeah. Well, that whole story about the guy that came into you kind of last-ditch effort, and I mean, you pretty much nailed it on the head. It's like, well, your thought life is really almost the trap that you've set for yourself here.
Yeah, it's no wonder you're in this state. Look what you're telling yourself. And what I didn't say as well is he was comparing himself to other fathers.
Interesting.
And other people as well. And that's, he was spewing like, I'm not as good as this person, or I wish I'd have done this differently. And because of that, I've caused all. It's like, well, listen, like what's good in your life, man? What's going good, and speak those out.
Right.
I actually just saw him this past Friday and said hey to him. So he's doing pretty good, because that was like 8 years ago.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, no.
Well, and as you talked about comparison, is there ever a healthy time to compare?
Well, I think if you compare yourself, and I wish I would have went into this scripture verse that I used yesterday, when it was who you were comparing yourself to, or what you're comparing yourself to. In that context, they said themselves a lot. Themselves. They were comparing to themselves. They were hoity-toity. You can't compare to those people who love themselves. Mm-hmm. And so, I think of the mentor relationship with Pastor Arlie and I, and as I embark on this new journey that's pretty huge,
right.
It's not like I want to compare myself to Pastor Arlie, because I'm never going to be him, And
right.
just somebody said the other day to me, wow, you have big shoes to fill. I'm like, now Pastor Arlie can take his shoes. I got my own.
That's a great way to think about it. I mean, because
I wasn't meant to be in his shoes.
Right.
Those are his.
Yeah.
I have mine. I have my purpose. But I want to emulate some of the things that Pastor Arlie did, because he was so successful at his leadership, at the sermon ideas that he's come up with, and just the impact that he has had. Like, I'm not going to compare, but I'm certainly going to look at that and say, wow, like, how can I do those? How can I be just as effective and powerful? And so I think if you compare yourself to the right people and the right things, it can actually elevate you. But when you compare yourself to things that shouldn't be, or that you can't help at all, but when you compare yourself to something or someone, how it feels, quit.
Right.
It should make you better, not worse.
Yeah. Is it causing guilt and shame?
Correct.
Or
it's different.
Or is it encouraging you to grow and to get stronger and get better?
Right. And I think that's the difference, is you need to make sure you're comparing yourself to the right people. Jesus said, be holy as I am holy. We're supposed to emulate. Yeah. But don't compare where it says, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had this. That's when it's dangerous.
Right. And that's really more coveting, I think, than comparing, if you want to use an Old Testament term.
That's true. Comparison might not be as strong of a word.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the English language. It's not.
There's so many things.
It's not great.
I know.
But so, as we talked about, you're going to keep the good things that Pastor Arlie's done here. He's taken his shoes, though. You can wear your own. I like that analogy, and so obviously the culture that he's built here, this healthy culture, we're going to keep. Style-wise, though, you may do things differently because it's Pastor Branden's style. I think you need to as well.
I'm going to operate best in my style.
Right, absolutely.
Rather than somebody else's style.
And one of the things that you touched on yesterday was just talking about this healthy church environment where people can come. They don't feel as though they have to put some false pretense out that they've got it all together or they're cleaned up or they're not struggling. And you said this should be the place where people can come and talk about their struggles or talk about their failures. I'd love for you to just maybe share a word with listeners about how they can partner with you in creating that culture.
I think it really starts with me. Or it starts with whoever's teaching up on the pulpit. Because if you're never transparent, if you think you are above the people and you're mostly talking down to them, and you never admit, man, this is what God spoke to me, and I just want to let you in on it, because maybe some of you are struggling with this too. That's what Pastor Arlie did great. And that's why our church is one of the best at allowing people to come in. But it could be as simple as when you see somebody different come in, leave a spot for somebody if possible. Leave 2 spots. And when you see somebody new, no matter what they look like, who they are, what you know about them, invite them in, because they're in church. They're about to hear the word of God. And if you're in a small group, invite them into your small group and to make them feel comfortable. But really, I think it begins with the pastoral leadership. And how we talk to people and how we talk about people and about ourselves up front, and then that'll just trickle down.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the staff here does really well, and the leadership within CWC do really well, is when they ask how you are, they genuinely want to know, and I think that's part of it, is they genuinely care about people here. And I think the more, and what you're talking about is the first step in showing people that we care, right? And I think from there, it's just genuinely talking to people and being interested in them.
Yeah.
And wherever God takes it from there is where God takes it. You don't
Yeah.
have to force anything.
The church really wasn't created to be a place for saints. It was a place to be created like a hospital for the sick.
Right. Yeah.
And there's going to be great people and stronger people than others, but man, if you neglect the piece where, we're a hospital, that's why Jesus came.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we need to emulate our services, our small groups, how we talk to and about each other. That's what we can do as a people.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Pastor
Yeah,
Branden.
of course.
And thanks for spending some of your time with us today on CWC Dive Deep. Join us next week as we continue sharing memories from the Vintage Collection. We've got more fun stories in the weeks coming up, so be sure to tell others about the podcast so they can listen in. And if you've missed past episodes, check those out at cwc.life/dive-deep. Have a great week.